the college and how level best the journey started and ended, and how they felt in terms of improvements are needed. Everything they can record and they can project. So that is our sincere request to all alumni members and execom members too. So please make it a grand success. Now let us start. Others will join in the meanwhile. So now Mr. Abhay Joshi will educate us about the internships and startups, how the world is looking immediately after completion of your BTech degree. Nobody will give you training. So you yourself upload your resume in such a way that I am mastered in this angle, C++ or Python. Ongoing Python course now I am also watching. So second year onwards, for the information of alumni members, I am telling, especially Abhay Joshi and others, value added course we are starting based on the inputs collected from stakeholders. First year value added courses, 4 value added courses above the curriculum, with till the end of the final year they are able to learn about the curriculum, which will be useful for their placement, not only but also for higher studies. So advanced topics like coding techniques, using Python programming, and master in C++, and advanced DSP processor architectures, and advanced VLSI system design, which are encourageable from the industry as on today. That is the reason behind we are educating them in terms of value added course free of cost. So ongoing value added course for at this juncture, already 5 days over, Python programming, which is undergoing by second year ECE EEE. 137 students are undergoing training. It is going well. Next 2 days it is winding up, and rigorously assignments and other things are rigorously, both sides are tested, and 72% outcome is measurable. So value added course for second years Python programming we have given first in first out. Last 10 working days we are doing, and next phase for same batch when they are coming into third year next year, advanced DSP processors and applications to industry. And when they are coming into final year, same present second years, we are educating them as a value added course, VLSI system design with backend tool. These all are the 3 value added courses of 2000 rupees worth per head college is paying to industry, and we are doing our level best. So this is information to the audience there. So you should also come forward whenever department and college is organizing value added courses. It is free of cost, college is pending. So this is about the information, and department is going on well, and we are expecting some projects also this year end. For next time NBA it will be fruitful. So this is the information about the department. Thank you. Over to Abhay Joshi. Now Abhay Joshi can take over. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, so I guess the participants we have close to about 20. So I'll just share my screen. Please let me know when it is visible. Okay, can you folks see my screen right now?
Yes.
Yes. All right. So yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I think it's been a long discussion we had even in the beginning as well. Satya basically spoke more about the qualities, the tendencies, and what are the requirements. But I'll try to focus my talk more on the lines of what exactly lies out there for you. And I have been a recent graduate of the college, so I graduated in 2017. Most of the students I see are from the ones who enrolled in 2018. It's been a while, and I worked across various companies, and in varying nature again. So currently, I work for the Boeing company, the aerospace company, as a industrial IoT systems engineer, majorly into research and development of new IoT products for the world's largest factory in Everett, Washington. So, given that, so the whole presentation is basically short. I wouldn't take a lot of your time. I would rather want to, just give you a brief run and then try to maybe discuss if you have any specific concerns. And you can always reach out to me in any form. I'm readily available. My contact details are also available with the department. Now, this is one of the important lines that I tend to preface my presentations always. This is something that I picked up from the Mozilla's then CEO. So he always mentions that your mileage may vary. So what I speak today might not be applicable for a lot of people, or might be interpreted in a different way, because my experiences have certainly shaped a lot of what I'm about to say today. All right. So I'll be majorly focusing upon the early career experience, what the companies would be looking forward to, or what are the areas that you should be basically touching base upon, and how we can do it while staying within the college. So that is basically the whole objective of this talk. Now, one of the key things that we need to remember is, at India currently, we stand at a very opportune moment in history. Now, specifically because we have one of the diversified labor force in the country, the population, the manufacturing, and the IT sector, it's all witnessing a quite a tremendous amount of paradigm shift, as you can see, with companies relocating a lot of their global offices into India, majorly due to the opportunity cost and the economics of scale. It has become a pretty decent location from what it was before. And if you take a look at Hyderabad specifically, you have the major offices for almost every other major company you can name up. So we sit in a very opportune moment of history, because especially with the pandemic, as you can see, fundamental shifts that were supposed to take years or decades altogether, they really happened within a month or weeks time frame. People had no choice but to adapt, and that has been a very interesting timeline if you follow purely from a technology standpoint, wherein all the innovations, how people have actually risen up to the challenge. It's quite exhilarating. But if you look at the future, what it holds for you, it's widely misunderstood, because one of the reasons why is, we, as much as our forefathers, basically expect our future to be a kind of pretty much on the lines of what our present is, which is basically again derived from their past experiences. But as you can see, things have never really worked out that way. So let's say in 1943, IBM chairman Thomas Watson said that there is a world market for maybe 5 computers. Now, if we just look around us today, we'll find more than that. Probably we have more than 5 computers right on our body today. A watch, a earphone, or your phone, or anything on those lines. So if you look at it, the human development has been majorly local and linear over the past 150,000 odd years. We used to stay in the same clan, probably cook the same food, travel like a group of nomads, but we always used to stick together, and it was majorly local and very linear in nature. But if I want to put that in perspective, the earliest form of technology appeared in the form of cave paintings, which came around like around 25,000 years ago. And then to the modern day, a little bit of the precursors of the agriculture came around 15,000 years ago. And then from there, the paper and the wheel took about 5,000 years. From there, when we started to organize ourselves into cities and communities, took around 2,500 years. And from there, when we tried to generate the scientific temperamentation, it took about 1,900 years. And from there, the industrialization, as we see today, has its seeds sowed in about 325 years ago. Your electricity, radio, telegraph, everything appeared about 95 years ago. The vacuum tube, which forms the basic fundamental study for our whole modern day computing, came around 65 years ago. And then the modern day PC started appearing in a mainstream public about 40 years ago. And then the internet, as we know today, such widespread and wide scale adoption started happening about 15 years ago, which was when it was accessible to the person at the last mile as well. Now, that helps us understand that the growth that we are seeing today in terms of technology has been over the past few decades. It's been global and exponential. Now, this is the reason why it has been very, very difficult for us to keep on terms with where we are going. To put that in perspective in a simple graph, as we can see here, you can see that just in the steep curve here, there is a billion-fold improvement, billion-fold amount of inventions that have happened in only a single century, as you can see. And this have potentially revolutionized the whole humankind. So if I want to explain it to you in a much, much deeper level, that something that you and me and everyone can relate to, let me just take the example of computing, for example. Now, on the y-axis, what you see is the increasing amount of compute, and then I have just plotted the various applications that are being championed across the curve. So when we had access to somewhat comparatively lesser amount of compute, we started by digitizing everything. Probably your land records, probably your documents, probably your birth certificates, or anything on those lines. We tried to start digitizing all of these elements. And when we had access to a little bit of more compute, we started, okay, why don't we just start networking everything? Let's try sharing data across geographies, across boundaries, whatever data that we have tend to digitize. If it can be networked, if it can be shared across multiple locations or multiple entities, that can create a nice system, is what we thought when we had access to a little bit of more compute. Now, when we had access to somewhere a little bit of more compute, we started saying, okay, let's do mobile everything. Okay, anything that you can do on your PC, let's try to bring it to mobile. If not, let's bring an Android application or anything, but just let's make it mobile. And the revolution that we are currently at the benefactors of is cloud everything. Everything is moving into the cloud and the mobile. These two with an edge paradigm are championing it with access to more and more amount of compute. Your AI, ML, your workloads, your synthesis, or anything on those lines can happen entirely in the cloud today. The latest generation of compute that we are seeing today is something called as AI everything. Now, it's basically nothing but statistics if you look at it on a broader perspective. So we have access to a huge amount of data, and we have access to a lot of compute, and that is when we started deriving intelligence out of it. And AI everything is a revolution that we are currently living in. Now, essentially what might come next is the question, if you really want to understand and keep yourself upskilling in those areas. Now, the interesting part that you need to understand here is it's not just about the technology. It's not just about the who comes to the market first, or it's not about the most fancy term that gets thrown around, but it's rather an ecosystem of services, an ecosystem of products, an ecosystem of solution enablers that have to come around to deliver something this massive, to deliver something on the lines of a revolution. Now, if I want to put that in perspective, now digitize everything and network everything. Now, this was possible only because we had Intel's processor at the edge, and then the Microsoft's Windows OS, which was running on top of it. Now, it was only because of that personal computing revolution that was brought forward by these two people coming together that we were able to achieve these milestones. Now, similarly, if you take a look at the mobile everything and the cloud everything paradigm, ARM, your advanced RISC machines at the edge, your Qualcomm Snapdragon or anything on those lines, Android at the edge again, and then Linux at the cloud made it happen. The whole revolution wouldn't have happened if those ecosystems couldn't come together. Now, it's an interesting thing that is going around. There are a lot of frameworks that are being thrown around right now. There's a lot of work that is being done. There is a lot of research. A lot of companies are putting in their money, but there is no specific ecosystem of a sort that has really come up with when we want to take a look at the next generation of computing that we'll be going towards. It is essentially it is very important to understand that when it comes to technology adoption, when it comes to applications or anything on those lines, computing forms the major backbone of our entire revolution scale. So if you are able to understand, if you are able to predict, or if you are able to get a feel for what might eventually come together, or what revolution or what ecosystems might propel the next layer of compute, you would be in a very, very, very nice position, according to me. So that being said, in order for you to understand that, you have to focus on developing a T-shaped kind of a skill paradigm. Now, this has been majorly, probably you might have come across it a lot of times as well. Now, what it essentially says is, you need to have a functional area, discipline, or a specialty wherein you are pretty much deeply involved and have a very good amount of knowledge. But with that being said, you should be also able to work outside of your core area, because none of these would make sense without the other. You can be a jack of all trades, it wouldn't really fetch you anywhere. But if you're just a master of one also, it wouldn't fetch you anywhere. You need to know one, and then have make sure that you have the ability to work outside your core area. Now, why is that important is because historically, engineers, we have excellent amount of technical skills. We are very skilled at, probably if I ask you how to rig up a common base configuration, or just sketch up an amplifier circuit, or give you all the H parameters, you would be able to give it to me. But it's also important for you, if you want to succeed in this rapidly changing and evolving workplace, you really need to understand the larger picture of what this technology is going to enable. Now, in order to understand, you need to know how to think independently, communicate clearly, and adapt to change if you really want to scale up in your career. Now, to help you put that in perspective, you can pick up any of the technologies on this curve, the hype cycle. There's a lot of words that have been throwing around these days. Every other day, they come up with new fancy term, whatever that has been happening. Pick your choice, whatever you're interested in at the end of the day. But as I was saying, if you don't have the T-shape and the if you don't have the T-shape kind of a learning, this is what will happen. Now, either you would become an expert in this one particular narrow field where you cannot get paid for the value you can't add, or if you are just a jack of all trades, you will just typically remain a journalist where you don't really fetch anywhere, or you don't really have a specific scaled up job. Now, this, what you see, is the sweet spot, the typical specialist job, as you can see over here, wherein you are able to specialize in a particular area, but you also have the surrounding awareness and interpretation of the work that goes along that area. So if I were to give you an example, as a systems engineer at one of the world's largest companies, which builds one of the most complex machines in the world, if you take a look at an aircraft, there are thousands and millions of components that have to basically come together to make sure that it functions safely. And what we have in our typical design process is what we call as a triple modular redundancy. And each of these systems has three layers of backup, and then each of them has three layers, so on and so forth. So all of these systems, they are not something that work in isolation, wherein they don't have interaction with other systems, but mostly these are all holistic systems which talk to one another and entirely over various disciplines. Now, today as a systems engineer, I would have to deal with the mechanical aspects of it. They're not asking me to do any kind of a finite element analysis or anything on those lines, but I should at least have a basic level of awareness of what might go in there. Now, if I want you to understand that from a pure electronic perspective, let's say if you're trying to design an SoC, one of the SoCs we did way back in a company I work for called Ineda, which was acquired by Intel. So we developed an SoC with multiprocessor architecture for Tesla, for autonomous driving applications. And there you have to understand the entire cycle if you want to fit into organizations which are that high velocity. Now imagine if you go for a different company, if you go for a major company, the design cycles usually last for years and years altogether, 4 years, 5 years, and all the complex designs that take place. Now when it comes to a startup kind of a scenario, there are high velocity projects which are cutting edge and state of the art, which are very, very, very complex for you to realize, and you wouldn't be able to contribute or work in such kind of environment if you don't think holistically and try to understand the whole picture. Now you can't really, just sit tight and just understand UVM and say that, hey, my role is done here. I needn't, really care about anything else that goes there. But what you need to understand is each of these systems or whatever you design, as much as an IP or a UART or a I2C or your AP bus or anything on those lines, all of them essentially have to interact with a multitude of things. And if you don't try to develop that systems level of thinking in a initial scale, it wouldn't help you later, because you won't get paid for the value you can't add. It's as simple as that, if I want to put it. Now it's important if you want to scale up, it's important if you want to make sure that you have a high growth career, that you understand the surroundings of those solutions as well. Now, if, as I was saying in the initial stages, we are facing a tremendous amount of change, accelerating transformations, with which majorly with digital forming the key backbone. And we all know that, the digital transformation is fueled by both software and hardware. And you need to understand that both of these are equally important. And electronics is not just about the hardware, it's equally amount of software. Now, when we used to work at Intel, we were led by a legendary industry pioneer called as Raja Koduri. If any of you have seen Bahubali movie, you might know. I think his name is Kiravani, and so he's just his cousin actually, and he's the chief architect for Intel. And he had a saying which we carried through our design philosophies also. For every order of magnitude of performance that is unlocked by hardware, there is at least 4 orders of magnitude of performance that is basically unlocked through software. Now, if you don't focus on that software business and you focus entirely on your hardware, you can't create a viable solution at the end of the day, which can be readily marketed to the outside world. Now, it's important for you to hone the skills that will carry you through any kind of change in both the areas. Just let's not restrict yourself to one specific area, saying that, hey, as electronics, I'll deal only with printed circuits board, or I'll only deal with your typical design flows or anything on those lines. But if you are able to develop that amount of the whole the understanding of the whole value chain, that will really help you carry forward. Now, when it comes to employability, it's typically, there's a pretty big definition that goes around. It says that, it's a set of achievements, skills, understanding, personal attributes, which blah, 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 can, help you become more employable or successful, so on and so forth. But what that matters for you to gain, for you to be even employable, is get real-time exposure. Now, when I say real time, it can be through anything. It might be through your DIY projects, or it might be through interning at a company, or it might be group of friends together, just working on something that is interesting. Anything on those lines, but it has to be real time, and it has to be something that is relevant to today's time. So if you work on something that is age old, that has been already done and dusted 20 years, 30 years ago, you might do it for understanding in the initial phases. But if you really want to jump on the paradigm shifts that are happening with every single day, you can't really afford to set yourself back 20 years back in time and try to run your way through them. Understand the fundamentals, grasp them, but make sure that you make a switch to the current real world problems and real world opportunities as soon as possible. Now, why is this important? Is the real time experience, staying current is important, is because when you get into a job, they wouldn't spend a lot of time training you unless and until you join a company which works on a service kind of a model. If you really want to work where things really happen, companies which really advance the state of the art, companies which actually do some real good work, that basically is very, very interesting to note. One of the things that I can absolutely tell you from my personal experiences, when we used to work for Intel, we did a project called as Ponte Vecchio, if you are aware of. And Intel has been planning on getting into the discrete graphic space for a very, very long time now. They tried their hands way back in 2002, 2004, and they didn't really materialize anything. But when it comes to integrated graphics, when you say integrated graphics, when you have a processor die, the graphics die is embedded inside the processor. It's not a separate die or a processor or a card on any of those lines. Now, you can only get limited amount of performance, which can't be really scaled up. And with all the heterogeneous workloads that you have been seeing these days, it's imperative that getting into the discrete graphic space, much where NVIDIA has a very, very strong foothold, especially for AI ML kind of workloads. It's important for a company to be there if they really want to secure their business of computing. Now, when we are working on those areas, it's a new field. There are a lot of new challenges, and nobody will sit through and guide you through each one of them and try to make you understand. Like there are usually very small teams inside India which work on such kind of projects. We were only about an 80-member team, and it was a new project for each one of us. And let me tell you, it's you can only get so much amount of support even if you are new in that field. So it all comes back to the basic training and the basic inquisitiveness that you have and the basic exposure that you have gained throughout your years. Fundamentally, things are always the same. The fundamental things do not deviate ever. All you need to do is make sure that you have your fundamentals strong and try to build on top of it. And the reason why it is important is for if you don't have that right kind of exposure, when the pressure is on in such kind of projects, you don't rise to the occasion. You fall to your highest level of preparation. And if your highest level of preparation is only something that you have learned in college through theoretical means, it is not going to be enough for you to sustain or grow in your professional lives moving forward. And one of the other things that your typical internships or opportunities like these will build is confidence. And it might not be positive, but what you learned will be majorly useful for your lifetime. Now, when I was in engineering, I remember around I think around 4-1 semester, I was basically on an internship in IISc Bangalore, and I was working on an embedded system for detecting the mechanical properties of carbon nanotubes. Now, we weren't able to materialize the whole solution, and it took a lot of time for me even trying to go back and forth with my supervisor over there, trying to make them understand. They were from an instrumentation and applied physics background. I was from an electronics background. So there was a lot of friction involved over there, and I wouldn't say that it was a great amount of learning experience, but it really helped me understand the lab setups, the working environments, and open my eyes to a different domain altogether. Mechanical testing using embedded systems, the whole device design to qualification cycles. Now, every opportunity you get, however good or bad or positive or negative it is, it's always a learning experience, and things like these will definitely add to you. And the most important part is you develop transferable skills, and you try to understand what you like and what you don't like. Now, if you ask me, of all the things, figuring out what you don't like is really, really important, because this is summarized beautifully in that quote I have downstairs. If all you have is a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail. Now, this happens to us also a lot of times. Let's say I come up with a solution or anything on those lines in a particular field. Now, I try to keep seeing, okay, so if someone comes to me with a problem, my mind will automatically go in a way wherein I try to make sure that I fit in this solution to solve a problem that they are facing. Now, let's say one of the solutions I was working on was how do we localize the radio frequency identification based tags using advanced miniature phased array antennas. Now, when I started looking, anything that came, hey, this can be done through 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 this. Now, this kind of thinking is what you eventually develop. I'm not saying it's wrong. It can be largely beneficial for in a lot of scenarios also. But when you are in your engineering days, when you have access to a lot of subjects, when you have access to a lot of curriculum, and we have access to a lot of resources, it's very important for you to dip your feet into multiple of these domains and try to understand which one of these that you truly don't like first, and then you figure out what you might like later. Because there is always this thing, there is something called as a Dunning-Kruger effect, wherein the initial amount of know-how that you possess will make you feel that you know everything in this particular domain, and you start feeling like an expert, or you feel like hey, this is pretty easy, I can really do this. But only when the complexity basically sets in, that is when you realize, hey, this is not really where I wanted to be, or this is not the area that I really wanted to work towards, or anything on those lines. And you wouldn't really understand or gain these experiences if you don't really go out, explore, and try to get into these fields as much as possible. And it can be done through a multitude of ways. I'm not saying for you to do 10 internships in a semester or 10 internships in a year or anything on those lines, but make sure that you explore the areas well enough to understand where your interest lies. Not everyone from electronics is supposed to go to VLSI. Not everyone from electronics is supposed to go to embedded systems. Not everyone is supposed to go to image processing or anything on those lines. It's become a highly interdisciplinary field right now, with a conglomeration of all these systems coming together. But it is very important for you to try to have at least a basic awareness of these areas, so that whenever you move forward, you make a conscious decision. Now, I try to work with CNC machines. I didn't really like it. I try to work on PCB designs, fabrications. I didn't really like much of it. I try to do circuit designs. I enjoyed it up to an extent. Then I went into system modeling and design. I enjoyed it up to an extent. Then I went into VLSI. Then we went into SoC design. Then we went into firmware. All of these aspects, right? I mean, I'm not saying that you have to sit through years and years altogether trying to do it, but when you have a couple of these, college is what is the place for you to really experiment and try to understand. As I believe there is a pretty nice lab, and Nicholas Sir has been instrumental in securing a good amount of hardware for you as well, that you can readily experiment upon, and just make sure that you understand and try to figure out what you don't like as well. And one of the key things that I really want to bring out for you as well, what companies look out for as of today, is even when you try to approach them or talk to them, see, you can always get into run-of-the-mill internships or projects or anything on those lines. But if I'm being honest with you, they wouldn't really matter much if you're going for a pretty core company, because they would look for what you're trying to bring to the team. Especially when it comes to high velocity companies, they wouldn't recruit freshers unless and until they have proven themselves to be capable enough of understanding beyond what is required of a typical engineering graduate. Now, one of the things that you really need to embed inside your thought process is try to make sure that you get a feel for the entire engineering design process. Now, what happens, you start thinking about projects from an academic standpoint, wherein you have to just give it for the sake of publishing a report, or as a part of your academic requirements or anything on those lines. But consider it as an opportunity. Consider your internship as an opportunity. Consider your project as an opportunity to try to understand the whole engineering design process. There is the entire life cycle associated with it, and the fundamental thing that we always tend to ignore is identification of the problem. Now, this is what companies, especially companies like us, look for. If you ask me, they don't want anyone who can just sit and implement solutions. They have already got thousands of engineers across the globe who can do that for them. But they need people who can add a different kind of value to the thought process they are currently following. And for that, see, it wouldn't happen on day one. But if you at least show them that you have a mindset that showcases it, that hey, it can be done this way, but I have tried it doing this way. I might have failed. I might have gotten this result, but this is what my learning is all about. And that will really help them set the tone. Now, when we dealt with our major project, it was on the lines of how do we use sensor networks on a scaled basis with energy harvesting, so that we provide reliable amount of communications. Now, we went to a conference. We met. There was one of the key pieces of processor architectures that was being discussed over there, which was called as hierarchical computing. Now, it sounds pretty logical if you think about it. Now, they have a multiple amount of cores, each of these cores with typical amount of processing power. Now, processing power is directly proportional to your power consumption requirements. Now, with multiple of these sized cores that you have, the small, large, small, big, large cores, based on the amount of workload and the tasks that the SoC is supposed to do, you can basically offload it to a particular processor or a core at the end of the day. Now, ARM, your advanced RISC machines, has something on the similar lines, which is called as a big little architecture, which is present in majority of the processors that you have in your smartphones as well. And we thought, okay, for a sensor node, that really makes sense. Because majorly we would just be polling the data, and the processing and aggregating might happen only once or twice in a day. So we can keep the task processing unit for a larger amount of time, just wake up and try to pull it. Especially when we are talking about energy harvested nodes, wherein the whole of the energy, it's pretty sporadic. You can't really model the availability of it. It's quite it's not a stochastic process, if you honestly ask me. So in those kind of scenarios, all of these key decisions, so we picked up a problem statement, and we made a decision of which processor we should be using, which components we should be using, the choice of the communication protocol, the choice of the energy harvesting technique for a particular given application, and the suitability of it. All of these aspects will really help you understand the entire engineering process. So you would identify the problem, you would research on that, you will build it, you will test it, and then probably you might or might not have time to improve or anything on those lines. But this cycle itself is enough for you to basically get a feel for the whole process. And we did it in conjunction with an industry partner. So we approached them, the same company we saw in the conference. We told them, hey, we think that your processor is interesting, and we would like to build our node around it and try to write these power consumption policies, which basically try to address such kind of communications, and also try to integrate the energy harvesting inside that, which basically jumps up the whole application. Now, when we did that, it eventually went to a stage wherein the industry partner wanted to pursue that as a separate product line as well. And that was the same company where I eventually started working full time as well after my graduation. So it's all about reaching out. So people will tell you, in order to gain an internship, probably you would have to pay some money, or go there, do that, or something on those lines. But believe me, you go to any of these companies, you do your due diligence, and you make sure that you have a problem which aligns with their business lines or anything on those lines. They will be more than happy to welcome you inside. And there are a lot of opportunities available, especially with Hyderabad becoming such a huge startup ecosystem. And majorly, we didn't have electronics a lot in India before, but it's picking up a lot. For example, if I want to tell you, Oppo has their 5G, the complete 5G R&D running out of here. OnePlus has their own 5G and the mobile unit running out of here. Samsung has one of the hugest presences here. Intel has a 1,500 employees strong research house here. So a lot of companies have set base, and they're all looking towards such kind of places where you would really fit in. But unless and until you work on something on these lines, or go to some, even when you're trying to approach them, you try to approach them from this side of the coin, I'm pretty sure they would agree to take you on board as well. So technology is making headways in a lot of areas, from healthcare to agriculture, to your retail, shopping experiences, or anything on those lines. But what you need to understand is that the whole nature of the rapid change of technology itself presents with a lot of challenges as well. Now, when you start in your initial curriculum, or initial thing, since you don't know much, you are on a constant learning and a growth curve. And after a while, the maturity sets in, you arrive at a steady state, and your learning starts diminishing, and you become less and less innovative. And that is a place where you would need a new software, a new technology, or a new invention if you really want to stay relevant in the future. And this cycle doesn't really end in the next 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years, or anything on those lines. It keeps on. These S curves of learning, they stay with you throughout your lifetime. And unless and until you are trying to adopt that mindset where you're aware of the problem, solution, engineering perspectives, and then try to understand the holistic thinking that comes around it, it will be difficult for you to grow exponentially in your own professional careers as well. So make sure that you cultivate an agile mindset, and then you learn by doing things rather than just reading. It's okay to know a lot of theory, but nothing beats hands-on practice. And most importantly, make sure that you're curious and exploratory in nature as well. So with this, this is one of my favorite perspectives put forth. Is It's by Mark Weiser. He wrote a paper way back in around '95, I think, which spoke up in Scientific American, which talked about the computer for the 21st century. And he mentioned there that the most profound technologies are the ones that disappear. They weave themselves into the fabric of everyday life until they are indistinguishable from it. Now, each of these technologies that you see around you today, right, as much as your cell phone or the laptop or the microphone or whatever you're using right now, they have matured and woven themselves into the fabric of our everyday life so much that you just expect them to work seamlessly. You can't, if your internet stops working even for a moment, you would rather sit and blame them rather than try to understand what the intricate details that and the complex engineering that has really gone into preparing that amount of device. It is that familiar and it is that rapid a change that is happening today. And if we really want to stay in the forefront of all this evolution, it is very important for you to gain real hand experiences, and it is very important for you to understand the thrust areas that you really want to focus upon. And it is also important for you to make sure that you try to figure out the interest areas and try to focus your efforts into such kind of areas where you really think you would thrive. It's okay to be wrong, it's okay to make a wrong decision, but it's very important for you to fail fast, and it's very important for you to fail forward. So with that being said, one of the things, I've been talking a lot about all of those things. So this is one of the proposals that I've been putting forth for the Alumni Association as well. So starting 2021, as we will anyway, we'll pulse the requirements and the interest that comes from the students for this. But as a give back to the college, a couple of us alumni members, we would like to assist you with any kind of resume evaluation or help you with internship matching across the industry, and also provide you with a little bit of environment awareness, especially when it comes to early career. There are a lot of our alumni who are in different places in different domains. Couple of them from design, couple of them in systems engineering, couple of them in embedded systems, couple of them in AI/ML, couple of them in verification. Yeah, there are a host amount of students available in all these domains, and they have been there for a while. At least for 3 to 4 years now, and they can provide you with at least the initial know-how of how the operating environments are. And especially with the recent times, the whole COVID business, they can provide you with a nice insider view as well. And if you require any assistance, even on the lines of higher education as well, a lot of even my juniors as well, they have been pursuing their masters in various fields, and a couple of them have also gone ahead to pursue their PhDs as well. Even I have my friends from my own schooling who have actually been you have gone to various places as well. If you require any kind of support in any of these areas, you can just write to us, and I think we should be able to at least provide you with initial amount of steering and guidance. I understand that it might be difficult for you to open up to your faculty or try to articulate things to them. This is where we come in. We don't have a huge amount of an age gap or something, so you can always be candid with us and try to put forth your reasons or concerns, and we will make sure that we tried our best way to address it. So that's all I had. So if so there are around, so if anyone has any questions or anything I can help them with, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Abhay Joshi. Now it is the participants, even though it is less, because the morning 2 hours it went well. 65 participants attended. So anyway, but the thing is, you have educated very well about the future roadmap of internships and what to be done, and how to cultivate the habit of internship, and not only what are the companies expecting to be as a graduate engineer trainee, All these things have been covered. And now the students are requested to interact with Abhay Joshi. However, the roadmap for next year already projected by Mr. Abhay Joshi as a part of alumni. What are their thoughts and to be implemented? So, as a being a third year student, you should have a roadmap at least now. Please interact with Abhay Joshi now. I request all students, whoever may be available online, please interact with Abhay Joshi now.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead,
Sir,
please.
if we look at Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates or Mukesh Ambani, like these people have their own creative skills, right? Creativity means creative thinking. How can we improve our creative thinking like
Okay,
them?
so, yeah. If I were to tell you that, so when it comes to an opportunity or any of this kind of growth, there is an interesting thing that you can read up. It's called as the Swiss cheese model. Have you watched Tom and Jerry?
Yes, yes, sir.
Yeah, so you remember that block of Swiss cheese, right, which has multiple holes in it actually. So that's
Huh.
that's called as a Swiss block of cheese, and it's a very famous term in economics actually, which they call it as a Swiss cheese block model, where you none of these two holes basically align, and if you keep seven of them right beside, and you want to send a stick right through it, only if it is able to pass through all of these cheese blocks in multiple dimensions, only then an opportunity is created or something on those lines actually. Now, being creative or being successful, it's is as much as about luck and the opportunity as it is about hard work as well. It is about opportunity, it is about time, and it is also about being sensible. Now, their circumstances or their ideologies differ a lot from where we are right now. The market realities are way too different right now. I was just talking to one of my colleague earlier this morning, where we were discussing about these as the trend is moving, as the markets are moving, you don't have a lot of conglomerates that are happening today. You don't have a lot of you don't have Tatas and Ambanis that are happening, wherein there is one business family which has controlling interest and stakes in multiple of these domains, but rather you have a high velocity unicorn or a startup in a very specific focused technology area, that they really see a problem there and they set out to solve it. Now, in order for you to do that, there is no golden rule. You have to be aware. You have to be aware, and there is no problem that is small at the end of the day. So if you are able to understand that, that itself sets you on a path. See, things wouldn't happen in a day or two. That is something that you would really need to understand. It takes years and years worth of patience and passion if you really want to make it work. But if you really expect to come up with a winning formula of a sort, probably that's never going to happen. Now, one of the things that I can advise you is, one of the things that even I learned back in my schooling was, uh, it's about asking better questions rather than launching myself into finding the answers. Now, every time you ask a better question, there is a higher amount of chance that you would come up with a satisfying answer as well. And one of the key questions that I remember is something that came from Guy Kawasaki. Guy Kawasaki is one of the Apple's first founders, and he always used to have a question in his mind, which he says that isn't that interesting? Now, this question helps you teach and explore the adjacent, things you would really usually brush off as not being in your field of interest, or not being useful to you as well. Time and time I have found that the insights that are basically gleaned from this kind of question has helped me overcome the roadblocks, and also open path to new kind of opportunities. Now, your Amazon CEO, right? Even he has a very famous term that he keeps following across. He says that perspective is worth 80 IQ points. Now, most of your breakthroughs in science, business have always come from people who have changed their perspective, and where people have typically seen the same problems or same run-of-the-mill problems, statements, opportunities. As such, people who have varied their perspective and thought on a different line have always discovered new solutions and often identified new problem spaces as well. Now, since you are right now, since at this age, we have that tendency where we are not largely biased towards a lot of things actually. So we still have that open mind. You still are in the nascent stages of your career as well, still finishing up on your professional course. Utilize this opportunity to gain a perspective and make sure that you don't think on everything the way it has been done today, but rather try to explore how it can be done. And you keep doing that, I think you'll basically, it's all up to the Swiss cheese model. Then everything has to fall in line for you to basically achieve anything further as well. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Sir, good afternoon.
Interact, hello.
Sir,
Please
one,
interact now.
sir, good afternoon.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, sir, I need one suggestion from you.
Yeah.
Sir, as we are from like EC background, so like if we want to get placed in core companies, like for example, Dell, Intel, or Qualcomm, like what are the skills to be required for to get, and what are they are looking for?
Okay, so one of the things that you need to understand is there are two modes of hirings that usually happen. So one is through your typical campus hiring, so that would be a difficult juncture, and the other one is through your open calls. And if you ask me honestly, the way it works is. If you directly apply on their websites or anything on those lines, you don't really necessarily warrant any kind of callback or anything for an interview, also, at least in a lot of cases. Now, the best way to do that is make sure that the hiring manager is familiar with you. And one of the things there is Nukala sir knows about it. So Indian National Academy of Engineering, INAE, and then Indian Academy of Sciences, and there are a host lot of other societies that host paid fellowships, paid summer internships for you, basically in such kind of companies and such kind of elite institutions as well. So there are people inside the companies who are designated as INA fellows or Sciences Academies fellows, and every year they pick up students from multiple of these multiple colleges. You have to go through an application procedure anyway, and they offer you a 2-month, 3-month internship based on your available time frame to work on a specific problem statement of which aligns with both you and your mentor's interest. Now, that is another way if you want to gain some familiarity within the organization. And then basically, it's difficult, if you ask me honestly, to get into a very large company on an initial go, because see, the positions are also very highly oversubscribed. Now, for every opening, there would at least be close to 70, 80 odd people who would just be applying all throughout, and there are internal movements that happen which basically fill up those kind of positions as well. Now, what you need to do there is first figure out which area that you want to focus upon, and then figure out which company is doing considerable amount of work in that particular area. Now see, Intel does a lot of work. Okay, they design one of the world's best processors, but what do they do in Hyderabad is something that you really need to understand. Now if you are trying to do graphics, so graphics didn't really exist in Hyderabad a year ago. They only did CPU design, and there are hardly around 200 odd people as a team here. Now they are 1,500 odd people, and their strategic goals and for expansion of Hyderabad site is majorly on the lines of graphics and software. So if these are the areas where the company is also looking forward to, and if you are able to upskill yourself, or you do a project, or you do any kind of exploratory, it can be anything. You needn't even do it at the same company. Even if you do it at a premier institute or your college as well, in those lines, and you try to approach them with that, they are pretty sure bound to take notice of it. Because understand, what distinguishes you from other applications is what they look out for. And especially since they fill up most of their positions through campus hirings, it's extremely difficult for you to get in just a walk in with a jack of all trades kind of a profile. If you really tailor yourself to the company's goals in that particular site where they are based at, you will actually have a lot of more opportunities. And if you want to give you a piece of advice, don't go for major companies in the initial phases of your career. Um, because the learning curve associated with major companies is not usually steep when it comes to early career roles. So you would basically, for at least for the good part of your early career, you would be focused on doing the same amount of repetitive job that basically wouldn't help you a lot. But rather, there are a lot of interesting startups. There are a lot of interesting companies that have been coming up these days. Pick up something on the lines of aerospace. Aerospace does a lot of work in FPGAs and allied areas. So all your circuits and systems, what you see over there, it's largely FPGAs and ASICs. So if you focus your interest in such kind of areas, that will really help you gain some footing. And with that footing, when you go to a major company, you wouldn't be stuck in a dead end role where you'll be doing the same thing repetitively over again, and you will be also offered a plum role which will provide you with opportunity to scale as well. So that I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abhay. And is there any possibility to invite that Bangalore-based Boeing or aircraft manufacturing company to educate our students through alumni in terms of opportunities and internships? Next week.
I might have to check on that because we have a specific set of colleges we visit every year. I don't know whether the policy has changed because we have been on a hiring freeze for this year. I'll just check with them if any such opportunity exists. There is our communications team which usually handles such kind of things. I'll place you in touch with them and you can place a request for a session.
Okay, okay. So any other queries, most welcome. And it is already 1 hour almost all. So based on the principal's directive and IAC's principles, we have done morning 1 session, 2-hour session. It went well. And now our alumni secretary, Abhay Joshi, educated all of us very well and clarified some doubts. And the roadmap for alumni meet January 2nd also shown. Nice presentation. Thank you very much, Abhay Joshi. And we wish you a happy new year, all of you, for 2020-21. And I request everybody's cooperation in next year also. Whenever such kind of meets are there, please come forward. Now, vote of thanks will be presented by Kunda Praveen. Sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Abhay Joshi. Mr. Abhay Joshi, thank you. You have explained very well regarding knowledge versus level of expertise graph and time versus learning. Continuous learning is most important. Such things you have explained very well because continuous learning is most important for the students as well as faculty. Thanks for your presentation. Thank you. And I thank students and all my faculty and my HOD sir, principal sir, everyone. I thank everyone for making it a grand success for the 2 sessions. Thank you, everyone.
Equally thankful for the opportunity. I think it's always a good experience to come back to college and talk to the students. And I usually keep talking to a couple of my juniors on a regular basis as well. And I mean, you can reach out to me. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn or on my email ID as well. So if you have any concerns or any information that you require from me at a later stage, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you, HOD sir, and for putting this program together. I think this is indeed a great step in the right direction, and I hope to see something great coming out of this initiative.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.